Thank you.
You bet. All right, let's shift gears and shift over to the other side, right over there on the shag carpet. We got Brian and Edie and a guest.
It's really not shag, it's all purpose.
Okay. You know, a wave of athletes are among the many Cuban immigrants floating to our shores.
You know, funny you bring that up, Edie. Cuban baseball star Andy Morales, a third baseman DH, is the latest added to that list. He was plucked from the ocean by the U.S. Coast Guard last week and is now seeking political asylum.
Should he get it, or should he head back to Cuba? Here to talk about that from our D.C. bureau is Jack Martin, Director of Special Projects for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, and in New York, immigration attorney Michael Wilds. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you. Jack, let's start with you. Now, doesn't the U.S. and Cuba have a special arrangement regarding refugees picked up at sea?
Not specifically with regard to refugees picked up at sea, but we have a special arrangement that treats Cubans differently from people everywhere else in the country.
And what is that?
What we're talking about here is asylum. Asylum is for people who fear persecution. It is not for baseball players who are having to work for less money in Cuba than they could make in the United States. So it's not really appropriate in this case.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is, now, I believe that under regular U.S. immigration laws, if people are picked up at sea, if they're in international waters, they go back. If they're in U.S. waters, they have the opportunity to come to the U.S. to apply for asylum. With Cubans, isn't there this one-foot rule?
No, well, in effect, anybody who's picked up has the opportunity to ask for asylum, whether it's a Haitian or a Cuban. What is different about the Cuban case is once they get on shore, the INS tends to leave them alone because of a provision called the Cuban Adjustment Act that allows them to become legal permanent residents in the United States after they've been in the United States for 1 year.
Michael, first off, when you look at this situation, look at Elian Gonzalez's situation, besides the age difference, Elian looks like he's going back. Oh, shouldn't this guy go back?
Well, many argue that people are trying to bootstrap themselves onto safe ground and avoid economic hardship and applications to the process by streamlining an asylum case. The fact is that this baseball player might have some political prominence. He may have a reasonable fear of being returned to Cuba. He should have a day in court. Many people have availed themselves of our legal system, and it's set up in such a way that we will call out whether or not a person has a bona fide application for asylum.
But if they get caught trying to leave Cuba, doesn't that sort of mean that they're going to get in trouble if they go back anyway?
Well, that's part of his asylum package. You know, an international baseball player is prominent and could apply for a whole host of visas. He didn't have to go this way. Many people who are coming from Cuba, if they can get out from Castro's dictatorship, could qualify independently for a whole host of visas.
Well, it just doesn't happen. Adrian Hernandez just signed by the Yankees that dresses a woman and sneak out, and Orlando Hernandez had that harrowing experience across oceans. He's now El Duque and a superstar pitcher with the New York Yankees. His brother snuck out years before that, became MVP of the World Series. It seems to me, Jack, that there's a double standard if you got extreme talent to play baseball. Am I right?
There tends to be a double standard, and there shouldn't be. We should have a unified policy that applies equally to all people, regardless of where they're coming from and regardless of what their sports talent is.
So it does sound like that there is some, you know, we had made we were joking off camera when this whole Elian saga began. We said, you know, if he goes back to Cuba in 20 years, he's going to be back here anyway if he plays any, decent baseball. And we thought it was a joke until you see this guy, and
Mike, you got to admit there's some similarities here.
Well, of course. I mean, you have in both cases an issue of political prominence. If only because of the way they departed and the way they arrived to the United States, they've now availed themselves of a good case. But the question is whether or not ultimately the law is lopsided, whether or not it's appealing to an agenda from the Cold War, and if this old cold warrior, Fidel Castro, has outlived that era, whether or not the immigration law should be more universally applied. The fact is, a Cuban who comes to our shores in a year's time is permitted to apply for permanent residence, and that offends a lot of other people.
Jack Martin, thanks for getting up with us. We really appreciate it. And of course, the Cuban immigrant problem is something that's going to get you up early for a lot of years, I think, because it's not coming to a close. And again, Mike Wilds, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, what else is coming up, Edie?
Well, just ahead on Fox and Friends, the oceans of potions, lotions, and pills. We're going to tell you what works.
And no, I don't
if you are
need him
trying
yet.
to battle baldness.
Plus, she's Primetime's favorite surly sex symbol. We'll be shooting the breeze with Just Shoot Me star Wendy Malick.
And we're about to tackle the Ross Wall.